Welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. Scott Linden here, your host on our weekly journey into the great outdoors behind good-looking dogs who are performing well, maybe with a good friend at our side. That's the whole idea here, and I'm going to help you a little bit out of that withdrawal problem you're having this time of year. After thinking about, what could I do right now that would help us all, kind of weather our way through the off season. And what better way to do that than to explore new places next season? I'm going to give you some inspiration, some motivation, maybe a couple practical tips. I call it Chasing Sasquatch for a bunch of reasons I'll explain in the podcast today. Yeah, our Fix It segment this week, we're going to kind of get our guns ready to help us shoot better. You've got a chance to win in the furfeathersfriends.com Word of the Week promotion, Pyke Gear Dakota pants. And then I'll ask you about your dog's performance this past season. Like I said, it's all coming up on the Upland Nation podcast, made possible by Pointer Shotguns, Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School, Trulock Choke Tubes, MidwayUSA.com, and Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food. Well, it's been an interesting week around here. Was recently on the Hunting Matters podcast put on by the Houston Safari Club Foundation. Had a lot of fun. Talking 30,000 foot level philosophy and also some practical tips and techniques about bird hunting and fly fishing of all things. Enjoyed it a lot. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Ramon, for having me on. If you haven't listened to it, you might enjoy it. Check them out. And if you are looking for reading material, new magazine article just came out in Gundog. It's something I've wanted to write for, about 11 months now. I finally pulled it together for the current puppy edition of Gundog magazine after hunting with my buddy Dave's new Brittany pup. You might enjoy it. It's a letter to Dave. You all get to read it too. In fact, you might read it before he gets his copy, for all I know. But there's something in there for everybody, so enjoy. I asked on the most recent newsletter, the Upland Nation Insights newsletter. By the way, subscribe if you want to get on the list and get some great information every couple weeks in your email inbox. Anyhow, I asked this question. Over the course of the entire season, how would you describe your dog's performance? And compared to what I saw on your earlier take on the season in general, bird populations, that sort of thing, I'm pleasantly surprised. You were kind of, so-so about the season in general. But when it comes to your dogs, boy, they did pretty well. 78% of you said your dog did a pretty good job. Yeah, he deserves another treat. 17% said, nothing to brag about. And then another 5.5% said, hey, man, can you recommend a new trainer? Well, I love those numbers. It's pretty hard to blame our dog for most of the crappy stuff that happens during the season. And even when it is our dog's fault, that means it's probably our fault, right? Well, it's time of year to start working on that, and we will, among other things. But we're going to talk first about finding inspiration in places we've never been before. That'll be the talk today, Chasing Sasquatch, brought to you by Mid-Valley Clays and Shooting School. MidvalleyClays.com is where you learn all about them. Check out their shotgun availability, especially in the sub-gauge realm. 20s, 28s, 410s, always in stock. Start your shotgun search by talking to Dave Fiedler over there at MidvalleyClays.com. This guy knows his stuff. He's a hunter. He's a target shooter, and a good one. And might have some interesting questions for you about why you want the shotgun you think you want. let him be your first stop at midvalleyclays.com. And I'm bragging on my dog right now. He did a great job. He was hunting hard. He lasted. His stamina was unbelievable. He was wearing me out. And I attribute all of that to Purina Pro Plan Sport dog food. You learn more about all their formulations for every life stage at ProPlansport.com. You know, only one brand fuels the most sporting dog champions, and that's Pro Plan Sport dog food from Purina. Now that the season's over and the worst of our withdrawal symptoms have passed, I hope, it's time to look ahead, isn't it? Well, I thought so, and I went through a bunch of notes I had and some things I'm working on for magazines and thought maybe together we could see ourselves safely through the off season with some food for thought, inspiration and motivation based on some of the experiences I've had in the last few seasons. And in fact, this is kind of a recounting of 2 or 3 seasons ago that I thought might be fun. So let's get in the truck and start chasing Sasquatch. Yeah, I know. It's just a mythical creature, but it's a great metaphor for what we do quite often when we're hunting. And you know my friend Tom, he's been on the podcast a couple times. Tom is a master of that online mapping app. And if you have one, you know what I mean. If you don't have one, know that what you can do is you can look at a spot and you can say, you know, that looks pretty good. I should go there sometime. So you mark it with one of the many choices on there. They've got all the practical ones. Here's where a guzzler is. Here's where there's a tree stand for you big game hunters, etc. But there's also a Sasquatch icon. And Tom would mark places that he thought might have potential with that Sasquatch icon. I thought it was kind of silly at first, and then I realized it's got more practical advantages than we thought. And so one season I decided to chase Sasquatch up and down my usual hunting territory, but finding places that I'd not hunted before and seeing how they panned out. Let me give you an example. We were poking around on a chucker spot my other friend Dave had marked the season before, and between the climb and the rests and the relacing the boots and all of that, I thought, you know, what about that spot over there, or the one we passed on the way in? So I started doing my best to avoid the usual locations, even in an area I knew well, and explore with, knowing full well that I might just fail, if you want to call it that, not find birds. There's all sorts of other things that you will enjoy about those unexplored places. And that was the idea. I was willing to do that. Maybe like you, I've shot enough birds. Yes, I want the potential to shoot a bird all the time. That's Jose Ortega y Gasset's premise in Meditations on Hunting. But to see some new places and the potential that they might be even better than the places I usually go, that was attraction enough for me. So on that day, we picked one of those spots and found quiet, no other tire tracks, incredible scenery. I mean, think about a natural castle, the ramparts and the columns and all of that. Instead, though, made out of lava. we got to dart around in those, just exploring. And besides the thrill of possibly falling off a cliff, there was a lot of opportunity for us. We each shot a bird in what I will call the courtyard of that castle. And so at the end of the day, I was hooked. I'm going to put Sasquatch icons in all sorts of places that I've driven past, always wondered about, or just look interesting on that satellite photo. Yeah, the first bottle of beer we cracked that night was incredibly cold and very tasty, and it's because we toasted a new spot. So on another trip, we crossed from one state to the next. Yeah, we can do that pretty easily in some parts of my bailiwick. We chased valley quail, chukars, and huns, but it was a spot we knew, and it was, after that last experience, it was kind of a letdown. So I was fired up. And on our next trip, the most fascinating part of that Sasquatch trip, Sasquatch chase, was all the huns I found. And I've alluded to that on the podcast a few times. In all the wrong places. It was a good year for huns, but it also reminded me that you don't have to go to an entirely different area code. You can just go to the next draw over and something interesting might happen. We found huns on the cheatgrass slopes that usually had chukars. Those sandy creek bottoms and boulder fields that harbored valley quail, huns. Bunch grass ridge lines, huns. Now, I never saw one of those giant footprints we all see when the first thing that comes up when you Google Sasquatch, those giant footprints. But I saw a lot of bird tracks, and I heard a lot of squeaky gates flying into the air. That's the sound those huns make, at least to me. That's screech, screech. What a day. Just a week later, I'm still old school in many ways. I use paper maps. And I started looking at one that I hadn't used for a while, but a spot that I go to every couple of years. And yes, the usual spots were on there. But I gave another look to it. And then I actually pulled out the online mapping app and compared the two. Because there's nothing like a satellite photo to tell you, and that's what the habitat really looks like. So I made a mark here, I made a mark there, and tangled draw north of a spot where I can usually find a bird. I put a Sasquatch there. There's a lush prairie, and the first time we were there, we discovered wild horses grazing out there. That was pretty cool. Marked those spots. I remembered a spot that somebody related to me over a pint at the cafe in the town that we stay in most of the time. And all of a sudden, I was ready to go to none of the places I really went to any other time. Bigfoot was the perfect symbol. I was searching for, I don't know. That's the whole idea. You never do know, do you? And luckily, I found most of it. On that trip, in brand new places, I found a lot of beautiful spots. I found some spectacular scenery, some fascinating habitat, and I also learned how to better use my online mapping app. As I was researching this podcast, I found an author I'd never heard of before, and something that he wrote really hits home. Think about this for a minute, from Andre Gide. Man cannot discover new oceans unless he has the courage to lose sight of the shore. Well, he was right. Wherever you go, if the hair on the back of your neck doesn't stand up, Sasquatch probably isn't in the neighborhood. But if your dog made a long cast out, hooked back, and nailed a running covey of quail, there might be some giant footprints somewhere in the vicinity. How close have you ever come to that cliff? Or that golden eagle flying right over your head? Or a lightning strike? You may not have seen that blurry, hairy figure loping away, but there's got to be some uncertainty, some doubt, and maybe unbalance in the ether, or you're not really exploring. You know, it wasn't just Columbus's voyage to the New World, but our own adrenaline that keeps our situational awareness up, and it serves as our inspiration. We don't have King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella funding our trips, but we don't need that. We've got adrenaline. We're a little bit like Neanderthals, walking into a cave for the first time, not quite sure if we'll be met by a dire wolf, or maybe that's where our clan decided to hole up for the night and they're already squatting around the fire. What's that smell in the distance? Is that a hairy bipedal creature? Yeah, in some parts of the country they call Sasquatch a stink ape. But whatever it is, if you feel like you're on your toes, ready for anything, then you've got the right perspective. You're in the right place. And that's usually not those tried and true coverts that you always hunt. It's usually a new spot. I get a kick out of that. Yeah, maybe I'm just a troublemaker. Maybe I got a warped perspective, but it works for me. Oh, by the way, I'm Scott Linden. This is the Upland Nation podcast. Solo venture into, well, the great unknown. Another week, another area code. We were snowbound and had a near fatal case of cabin fever. Dave's always beating me at cribbage. I only play to make him happy. And boy, does it make him happy when he trumps me. What's that, the term in cribbage, skunked? You don't even get the last turnaround on your pegboard? That's me. Anyway, I was bored stiff of getting my butt kicked at cribbage and looking out at the snow. So I said, let's just drive. Let's leave this spot and drive south, kind of like ducks migrating, over that ridge that we always pass en route to that little hobbit valley we like to go to because we can always find quail there. Let's keep going beyond that. Let's see what happens. So we drove, and it didn't take long, but eventually we got out of the snow, and we found cheatgrass. And of course, chuckers eat cheatgrass. They were cooperative. I had 1 point from Flick. I had to walk. Well, I didn't walk. I tripped and stumbled and scrambled 300 yards through the sagebrush, all the lava rocks. Finally get caught up. I didn't get all the way caught up. I was almost close enough for a shot when the birds got up, but one flew right at me. Good dog. Not a bad shot. Another time, I was on my own, aiming at a kind of a go-to quail destination. Yeah, once in a while we all need that. Having a bad day, bad season, go somewhere, get some positive feedback. That's where I was. But it was, well, I was kind of, just looking off on the middle of nowhere. And I realized I'd recommended that spot over there to somebody new to our game. and I offered to guide him. So that just stirred in my memory that the last time we were together, he mentioned a draw where he runs his cows in the spring. And don't ask me how my mind works. I don't know it. Maybe someday they'll have a app for that. But so how that all worked, I don't know. But I remembered that spot, and it wasn't too far. So I made a U-turn, drove over to that spot. Because why not? It was 2 ridges away from the place where I recommended he go, but it was a spot that I drove past 10 times a year. And so while I was going up a really bad snowy road in 4-wheel drive low, I put 2 and 2 together. It's actually the same spot coming from a different direction. When we got to the top, there was this bowl, more like an amphitheater, covered in a little dusting of snow. That's all. We found we found a gold mine up there. And then we found the quail. The real treasure on that trip were the vividly colored, hard-flying valley quail. Yeah, sometimes Sasquatch is hiding in plain sight. That's why we don't see him. We don't think about it. We don't take a moment. We don't pull over. We don't take one last look at our online mapping app. We were on a TV shoot in Kansas once, and we were just racing to get to the spots we needed to get to for that day's shoot. But on the way, we're passing all sorts of walk-in signs. You know, they have a walk-in program too. Just past the town limit sign. So I made a mark. I had a hard copy of the state's hunting atlas, and I made a few X's here and there. I can't draw a Sasquatch, but you know what I mean. We shot the show. Tad and Lynn put them on a plane. I stayed. Let me tell you about that after the break. The Upland Nation podcast is brought to you by TrulockChokes.com. You know, those Chad Hodge upland chokes are flying out the door. They are busier than they've ever been, Scott Trulock tells me. And maybe the reason is they listen to people like us. Here's what we need. What can you do? I'm working with them now on more of that, so stand by. But in the meanwhile, know that their quality control program is second to none. If you get a choke tube or a set of choke tubes from Trulock Chokes, you will be happy. That's their guarantee. Got a lifetime warranty, satisfaction guarantee. Go to TrulockChokes.com, TRULOCK, TrulockChokes.com. Sign up for their email notifications on sales and other promotions. I can guarantee you, and Scott Trulock will guarantee, that you will be satisfied. And of course, if you're shopping for a new shotgun, the best place to start may well be pointershotguns.com. They've got those new FT12 semi-automatics, very well reviewed, and with a manufacturer's suggested retail price of $4.99. How can you go wrong? Whether you're upgrading, thinking about changing to a different configuration from automatic to over and under to side by side, any gauge, any color, any finish. Learn more at pointershotguns.com. Okay, so I've got a haul path for a couple days in, let's see, where were we? I'd call it north central Kansas. All of those walk-in signs I'd seen while we were driving past, while exceeding the speed limit, I had the chance to explore on my own. So I found one of those spots that I'd marked on my map and parked in what I guessed was the parking area. There were no other tire marks there. And I have that experience a lot. You know, I've described it as the kind of the Grand Prix auto racing start. Everybody races to their car, piles in, and peels out. And they go as far as they can. When sometimes Sasquatch is right there at the town limit sign. Well, in this case, it looked like that might be true. So I poked around in some of the ditches. There's a lot of thickets of some plants I don't know, but also plums, wild plums. That same patch had some cut weed on it. It had a little swale or two that was kind of damp at the bottom, and it had some timber. And it was that park-like timber, not a lot of underbrush. The kind of stuff that in a magazine, that's where the bobwhite, hey, they were. And nobody else was there. In 3 hours, we were flying bobwhites in little coveys, singles and doubles. And then in the ditch surrounding one of those cut wheat fields, Flick pointed a ringneck. Okay, I missed it twice. But still, it was as if somebody had said, Sasquatch, your job is to build the ideal, compact bird habitat. Put a little of everything in the right place. And it was pretty cool. But I only stopped there because I'd marked it as a place that probably needed at least a visit. Flick, I did shoot a wing-clipped quail into that thicket, that plum thicket. Flick tracked it. I just stood on the outside. And then everything fell silent. I started moseying over, and I had to, you know how you put your gun down, you put your hands out in front of you, you push them into the brush, and then you spread that. There he is, or half of him is. The other half is dug under a big log, and that's where he found the quail. Extra kibble that night, Flick. Good boy. And thank you, Sasquatch. Never would have been to that spot had I not thought about how good looking it was, at least as we raced past. Now, don't worry. Unlike all those TV shows about them, we will probably never meet a Sasquatch. And what would you say if you did? Well, probably thank you if you're me. But we do meet a lot of other fascinating bipedal individuals when we go out to places where Sasquatch might be roaming. I remember one hotel, I cannot believe there was even, well, it used to be a stage stop, so they turned some of that into a slightly more modern hotel. And it was literally one of those places you look out the window and you could see the tumbleweed crossing the road. Well, yes, it's everywhere now. My cell phone beeped. And it was a buckaroo I knew from out of that general area. And of course, general area out there is 60 miles. He was a Facebook friend, and I told him I might be in the area. So he said he was coming to town for dinner and invited us. So I said, yeah, sure. It'll take me a while to get there. And he said, no, it won't. Look the other way out the window. That's the cafe I'll meet you at. So we got together there, and number one, that was great in itself. But a bunch of other locals eventually joined in, and a good time was had by all. We talked about the usual stuff out there, the weather, cattle, prices, rodeo, dogs, birds, and, well, all the things that are the stuff of fellowship. And I was only there because I'd marked it on my map as a place that would be worth exploring a little bit more. In another state, I was the first back to the truck at the end of the day. This was a spot that neither of us knew, but from across the river about 2 miles, you could see some topology that might be worthwhile. It took us some effort to get there. Cross the river, up the good road, turn off onto the bad road, put it into four-wheel drive low, and then labor your way up that rutted road to the top. I get back to the truck first and am just admiring the view with a aluminum can in my hand and a craft beer inside it, when I hear somebody else in four-wheel drive low laboring their way up the same bad road. So my immediate thought is, shoot, somebody else put a Sasquatch on their map too. That truck stops and parks right next to my truck, and out piles my buddy. You've heard me mention Ben Warner. He gets out of the passenger side with his dog, and out of the driver's side comes another guy who I don't know. It turns out, though, we've been Facebook friends for years. The story goes, Ben was exploring way down there, chasing another Sasquatch, when he realized he probably better turn around and start heading back to my truck. Well, Mark sees him walking the road with his dog and says, "Hey, are you lost?" Ben says, "No, but I got to go all the way up there to meet my buddy." And Mark says, "Oh, I'll take you up there. By the way, who's your friend?" Poof! Party. Yeah, a lot of fun. Those are the things that a stink ape will get you into. Great stuff, whether it's social or wildlife. I was at another place, local cafe, having dinner with a friend of mine, and who walks in, a pro photographer. You've seen his work everywhere, who I hadn't seen in 10 years. We had a good time the next day exploring some of those Sasquatch marks that he had made on his map in that area. Yeah, for a mythical critter, that Sasquatch, he works some magic, doesn't he? You know, sometimes it's the dogs that are best at channeling Sasquatch. His first season in the field, Flick was just kind of romping around, and I would just stand and watch those natural abilities kind of exhibit themselves. Of course, keeping up with him got me into the best shape of my life, and maybe it's a puppy thing because I saw it in Dave's Brittany last season. For some reason, puppies are steadier than 2-year-old dogs, at least in my opinion, quite often. And Flick, with all that energy, inspired me to go to more of those places I'd marked on the map. We have one spot, I've been by it for decades. I'll drive past this 1 square mile. And you know, on a paper map, state land is blue or purple. At least that's what I'm told. They all look blue to me. This time around, Flick woke up as we were driving past the cutoff, the road that goes up there. He woke up, riding shotgun, woke up and looked at that road. Well, I wasn't going to any place that was worth shouting about, so that was enough of a sign for me. We went up this muddy, ugly 2-track along this sheer lava rock wall. So we had to kind of make a 160-degree turn, get onto that muddy road, and then go slowly up along that wall to the top. At the top of that wall, it levels out, and on one side, there's a wheat field. On the other side is my blue square, all sagebrush. Well, we piled out, and as we hunted, at one point, his GPS collar says he's on point, 195 yards down the slope on the other side of that rock wall. So I get to the edge there, and I look down. He's like on 4 different rocks, those bowling ball size rocks that come down in kind of chimneys, they call them, I think. And so he's on point. And I've got to go down those same rocks to get to him. So my job is to swing wide, come in below the birds, or where I think they are, without causing an avalanche and breaking an ankle. Well, I almost made it. But Sasquatch was right again. A 50-bird chucker covey had rocketed down slope as I tripped and stumbled down that pile of rocks. That whole season was full of experiences like that. Not just missed opportunities at shots, but desolate places, wild birds, and a dog that was just so earnest. You know that puppy kind of mood that they have. They take the world and birds so seriously, and I'm okay with that. That's what they're for. They lead us to these places just as often as that Sasquatch icon does. Flick-pinned chuckers, pinned huns, valley quail, bob whites, ringnecks. 4 different states he got to hunt that first season. I hit enough of them. But I also saw all sorts of other interesting things. Petroglyphs of Sasquatch ancestors. A 10-foot tall rock cairn. Still don't know what it was marking, and nobody's been able to explain it to me. So if your plan is not to follow the plan, then every one of your trips can become an adventure with twists and turns. Yeah, you're never going to find that mythical beast, but you might find mystical experiences. Let me give you one final example. Sergeant Ben Warner and I had hunted. I'd showed him this. I told him this spot at a training day, and then I showed him on the map, and he went soon thereafter. And he came back and said, "This time I'm taking you." So we even stayed in a hotel. Well, if you could call it that, a cabin right in that same general area. First time we hunted it together was the most memorable hunt I've had in a long time. It was dry. It was warm enough, but not too warm. We headed off on this 2-track upstream of a big desert river that you've probably heard of. The sky was blue. We just kept going. I'd hunted and he'd hunted individually closer in. But this time, with that opportunity, with a road that was in good shape, he insisted we just keep driving. He said, I marked some things that we might want to look at over there. It wasn't a bad drive. It was just a long way. We were going upstream. On our right are basalt cliffs that just basically fell off into the river. And then pretty much that was the end of the road. We parked in an old rusted cattle tank and thought we could start hunting from there. We were going to go down towards the river, but before we could, Bernie, Ben's short hair, and Flick, my wire hair, were both on point. Oh, they were 150 yards apart, so, deduce it for yourself. I moved to Flick, Ben moved to Bernie. His birds flushed first, and he shot a valley quail out of that covey. Well, the shot launched my covey into the air, and the last one went straight up and fell to my shot. A flat ground chucker. We walked 14 miles that day, never got near the river. Level terrain, cooperative birds the whole way out, the whole way back. When the sun sank below the horizon, we looked at our GPS handhelds at the tailgate. Each dog had run 31 miles. Yeah, what a day. All because somebody decided, let's go past all those other spots to someplace we've never been before. You ever read Calvin and Hobbes, the comic? Well, the creator's name is Bill Watterson. And once in one of those comics, he said something like, the truth is most of us discover where we're headed when we arrive. And he's absolutely right. Those unknown spots, the places on the old maps in the Middle Ages that said there'll be monsters there. That's where the adventure really is. If you're bored with your hunting, you're disappointed with your hunting, you're just looking for something to kind of up the ante, mark some Sasquatches on your own mobile mapping app. Trust your gut. Follow your dog. And don't worry if you get skunked. Keep your mind open and have zero expectations. You will be pleasantly surprised because that's when the magic happens, and you never know. You just might find Sasquatch. Hey, we still got a little bit more to cover here. Our Fix It segment is all about taking care of your gun so you become a better shooter. And our word of the week. You might win those Dakota pants from Pyke Gear. After this word from MidwayUSA.com, clothing, this is the time of year to start, stocking up, making sure you got everything for next season. Clothing ships for free if you order over $99 worth. Spend $100, get free shipping at MidwayUSA.com. Sign up for their emails or texts. You get 10% off your next order. And there's always something going on there, a contest, a promotion, a sale of one sort or another, and my exclusive videos on dog training. It's all at MidwayUSA.com. And the few birds I shoot, I lay the credit on high-vis sights. They make my eyes work correctly. I got enough problems. I'm cross-dominant. Anyway. But with a high-vis interlocking light pipe on my muzzle, my head seems to function correctly. HIVIZ sights.com. Learn more. There's a video there I made just to explain all this in more detail. You'll get it. Watch the video and you'll figure it out. I did. HighVisSights.com. Well, this week we're going to fix your shooting. Well, I can't guarantee that, but it is one of the many things that you can do easily that could help your shooting. Let's talk choke tubes. I know I've talked about them a lot earlier in the podcast. Thank you, Scott Trulock. But it got me to thinking, this time of year when we're cleaning our guns or we're putting them up for the off season, maybe we're swapping out target guns and that sort of thing. But do you ever think about taking out your choke tubes? It's always a good idea. I've been reminded time and time again when it's hard to get them out that I should be taking them out regularly so they don't fuse themselves into the muzzle of the gun. So pull all your choke tubes out. Keep track of them. Don't just pile them all in one spot. Do them one gun at a time. First things first, confirm the constriction. Make sure you got the right choke tubes in the right barrels. Give some thought to whether you should change that for next season or for next week. Then clean them. Clean the threads on the inside of the gun muzzle too, and then lubricate. There are choke tube greases out there. There's a gun grease I really like. Whatever you like, use something of a grease rather than an oil so that it functions even under heat. Greases will hold up better under heat. Put them back in, make sure they're nice and tight. Oh, now, If only I could find my choke tube wrench. That's our Fix It segment for this week. Thanks for listening. It's time for our Fur Feathers Friends, brought to you by Pointer Shotguns, Word of the Week. This is your last chance at a pair of Pyke Gear Dakota pants, $230 value. And then if you enter, you're also entered for that 4-pack of Pointer Shotguns. Go to furfeathersfriends.com, scroll down to the bottom and fill out the form. If you want those Dakota pants, you'll add the word of the week, which this week is Target. furfeathersfriends.com, scroll down, add the word of the week, Target. Good luck to you. Hey, if you like the podcast, please tell one person about it. That's how we grow, and we're continuing to grow. If you have the time, please leave a rating or a review at Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for both of those favors. And thank you to our sponsors who make this all possible: Sage and Breaker Gun Care Products, Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food, MidValleyClays.com, TrueLock Choke Tubes, MidwayUSA.com, Pointer Shotguns, and High Viz Shooting Systems. Sure appreciate your kind attention. Hope you are inspired, motivated, or otherwise moved to chase your own Sasquatches. Maybe I'll see you out there. I'm Scott Linden. Thanks for listening to the Upland Nation Podcast.